Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Seth Williams and Jaron Barnes with the REtipster podcast. And we've got an interesting opportunity today to talk with an active member of the REtipster Club who officially quit his day job just a few months ago and is now working on his land investing business full time. And I'm talking about a guy named Jay Thomason who he posted this in our private forum back in May of this year. And when I saw this, I was just like, first of all, that's amazing. Second of all, I bet there's at least a few people in our crowd who would love to hear more details on how he's been able to do this. And also on the call with us today is Jay's business partner, Daniel Earhart. And we're going to talk about basically both of the roles they've played in taking this huge step towards financial freedom. So I think there's a lot we're going to dig into and discover today. So thanks a lot for being with us. And with that, Jay and Daniel, welcome. How are you guys doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having us, man.
Yeah, no, we're doing awesome. I'm excited to be here. So
cool. So just to recap, how long have you guys both been in the land business? Did you start at the same time, or like whose idea was it to jump into this? And then how did you end up somehow working together?
Gotcha. I'll go ahead and jump in there and start. So I originally started back in 2016. I was traveling a lot for work, kind of figuring out that that's not exactly what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. So tried to kind of figure out what I wanted to do, started listening to some podcasts and stumbled upon somebody that was talking about land investing. So looked into it quite a bit and actually ended up going through the Land Academy course. And then I sent out my first mailer fall of 2016, ended up buying 4 or 5 properties, sold those, then took a little bit of a break from it, just kind of thinking through some things. Then fast forward to the end of 2017 and decided I needed to send out another mailer and kick it back up again. And so that's kind of where Jay came into the equation. I ended up having a really good response from that mailer. And so had more properties than I could actually buy. And so I was talking with Jay about it and asked if he wanted to get involved with it. And he said, yeah, absolutely. So, so that was early 2018. And, Jay, if you want to jump in from there.
So originally the thought was I was just going to act as an investor in a couple of properties. One of the things that Daniel, has that I don't is a couple of young boys. My kids are 15 and 18, so they're pretty well self-sufficient. Both of Daniel's kids require quite a bit more attention, so he doesn't have quite the free time that I do. He and I started talking about it after I committed to acting as an investor, and I just kind of got more and more educated on land investing, on the process, and we decided that maybe it made sense for us to go in together as a full partnership. So we kind of started out with me as an investor for about the first half of that mailer, and then as we got into it a little bit deeper, we developed this full partnership where both of us were managing and kind of running the business.
So dive into a little bit about how you guys structured this partnership. A lot of the times, especially with family, that can add a very interesting dynamic to a business partnership. So it started off as kind of a private or silent partner and then merged into actually being in the trenches together. How did you guys set up the business entity? Like, how did you guys decide on equity ownership, all of that?
So when we were going, the properties that we're buying are actually within a couple, 2 or 3 hours of where we live. So we'd take that as an opportunity just to jump in the truck and go look at some property. Had a lot of very serious conversations with both Jay and I's personality. We don't mind getting straight into it and having tough conversations about that. Jaron, you'd mentioned that Jay and I are brother-in-laws, and we talked a lot about that how that does make things a little bit complicated. And we were very very focused and wanted to be structured so that, hey, if something goes wrong, then we're just going to let go both ways, so that we're not going to bother our family. That's non-negotiable. So that was the first step. And then there was a lot of questions as far as, what happens if one of us later on down the road doesn't want to do this anymore and we want to sell out? We do have first right of refusal? Things like that. If someone dies, then what does that look like? And so basically we spent that time just really hashing out all that stuff, writing it down. And then we're set up as an LLC. So we've got our operating agreement. And so we're equal equity partners in that. And like I said, a lot of conversations that some people may not like to have, but I think it's really important just to have those out there. And it's a lot of work to sit down and really think through that stuff, but it's something that needs to be done.
Yeah, I know something that some people do when they're doing a partnership like this is they'll make sure that one of the two parties has like 51% ownership or 50.01%, just so that there's a majority owner somewhere. Mm-hmm. There will never be like a stalemate where you're just like in a gridlock and you can't get over something. You guys just have a straight up 50-50? And if so, do you think that's an issue at all, or not really?
That technically Daniel is 51% owner.
Okay.
2006 through the end of 2008, I flipped houses in a partnership. It was just me and one other guy. And it was a real positive experience, partnership. But that was one of the first conversations we had. This was kind of another deal where I joined him out of the blue. And the very first day, he's like, this is my company. I'm the boss. That you and I are partners in this thing. But at the end of the day, if there's anything that we disagree on fundamentally, I get the overriding vote. Mm-hmm. And truthfully, it never came to play. It never mattered. But we established that at the beginning. So that was actually one of the very first conversations Daniel and I had, that kicked off that kind of long, tough conversation.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know a lot of times part of the reason why people will partner together is because one party has skill sets in certain areas and the other party has a different set of skill sets in other areas, and they kind of complement each other. Is that how you guys work? If so, is there like which one of you specializes in what, or do you both just share everything?
No. So right now, kind of the way our roles are set up is the best way to describe it is since Jay's doing this full time now, he is neck deep in the day-to-day operations. It's just that's the way it works, and that we've both talked about that, and we're fine with that. I'm more of the strategic. Hey, here's the next counties we're going to mail. 2-3 months down the road. Here's what it looks like. Here's kind of where we need to. What I think we should do. What it looks like. Kind of bigger picture strategic stuff. But not to say that Jay's not involved in all of that. And certainly once I start doing this full time, I would see the day-to-day operations just kind of being split down the middle. We've talked about just having a buy side and a sell side, just because that kind of seems like it is a natural split there of how to move the responsibilities around. But yeah, so it's still evolving. But yeah, for the most part, Jay does kind of the day-to-day operations.
That's awesome. Where are you guys primarily doing your business, and how many deals have you guys done to date?
We do all of our business inside the state of Missouri. And in fact, we kind of specialize around recreational lakes throughout the state. So geographically, we're a lot tighter than some land businesses. To date, we've done a little over 50 deals. Mm-hmm. That although we just bought in the month of July, we bought 20 properties, and so we are really putting a concerted effort in ramping up our business, and particularly some owner finance area of it. So we've gone to some smaller properties that we're buying in quantity for some long-term growth of just kind of our business model of having owner finance to take care of operating expenses and overhead, some income for us, and then the bigger properties as our main source of income.
Mm-hmm. And have you found that owner financing is like a pretty critical thing to make this all work, to get properties sold fast enough and to have, recurring income on a regular basis? Or is it just kind of something you strategically decided to get into? Like, how vital is it in the overall operation for you guys?
I think it's a little of both. Like, we're just now getting into it heavily. We've got a couple deals out there that we've got notes on right now. But the main thing was that if we want to make this sustainable and we're both going to be doing this full time, we wanted to at least get some sort of kind of steady income, just to kind of help soothe out some of the peaks and valleys.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big part of it. And like I said, our intention is to strategically grow that quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But then also, we're still going to continue to pick up some larger properties and flip those as we have.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now, my understanding is that, so Jay, you've been able to leave your day job, and Daniel, you're not there yet, but you're thinking you're probably going to get there, I don't know, in the next year or so, or something like that. So is that just because, like, if you guys are, 50-50 owners and you're presumably making the same from each deal and that kind of thing, is that just because, Jay, you were willing to kind of go out on a limb before Daniel was, or I don't know, any particular reason why it sort of happened at different times for you?
So I originally, when I came into this, I was pretty content in my job and didn't have any interest of changing up. But as we went through it and, had a pretty good string of success, it was pretty obvious that it had the potential to take care of, my income that I was making at my other job. In October of last year, is actually the day before my birthday, is when I committed to myself and Daniel and my wife that by October of this year, that was the goal I was setting, was to make land investing my full-time business. We had a pretty good spring this year, and financially, I was able to make that move early.
Mm-hmm.
And so May 31st was my last day of work. That it's, I don't know. I don't want to speak for Daniel, but I can tell you that there is a sense of eagerness that he has to, enjoy some of this freedom that I've grabbed as well.
Yeah.
And I'll go ahead and jump in too. Our situations are a little bit different. As Jay said, I've got younger kids. His kids are a little bit older. So for me, I'm looking to build up a little bit more of a safety blanket, just for both myself and my wife's sanity. I think I probably could go ahead and jump into it, but just so everybody else feels better about it. That's some kind of pushing it down the road. But like I said, within the next year for sure is my plan. So
yeah, I totally get that. That was actually my situation too, Daniel. I don't even know what point in time I could have officially quit my job, but I know I could have done it a lot sooner than I did. It was more just like, I don't know. I want to know this is a sure thing. Like, nothing's going to get in the way of this going south, that kind of thing. So I get it. Sometimes it's just a personal comfort level thing.
Yep.
So, and I'll piggyback on that. I've had that thought, oh shoot, man, I did this sooner than I should have. I should have been more patient. It was just me, being too eager to make something happen instead of waiting until it was a sure thing. So it's still scary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How important do you think it was for you to make that decision? Like, on this date, this year, I'm going to be done. Like, if you hadn't done that, I don't know, like was that, do you think that was a big psychological boost for you to like do whatever needs to be done to make this work?
It really was. And to be transparent in this whole thing, that actually over the last year or so, I mean, I've kind of been real intentional on living my whole life to the fullest. Not just my job, but I've really come to appreciate that every day is a gift. I mean, you never know for sure what's going to happen tomorrow. And so it doesn't make too much sense to save up all of the good things until the very end. Mm-hmm. That my wife was super, super supportive. So coincidentally, May 31st, my daughter just graduated high school this year. Mm-hmm. That our 20th wedding anniversary was the very end of May. And we had a big family trip scheduled down to the Dominican Republic. And this was in probably March or maybe early April. I said something to my wife that, financially, I will have met some of the milestones that I set for myself at the end of October here at the end of May. Maybe I'm not going to come back to work after our vacation. And my wife was like, that makes perfect sense. I mean, that is a great time to start up your new life. Do it. So that little bit of nudge that she gave me was really all it took to where I gave my boss, like a 45-day notice, and was able to leave there, feeling good about the effort that I put in over the last 10 years and not leaving them in a bad place. And we got another mailer ready that Daniel and I were pretty intentional about. As soon as I get back from vacation, there's going to be work to do. So have this land business ready to start humming.
Mm-hmm.
That's really interesting about your wife's support. I'm just curious, if your spouse was not supportive, if she showed signs of being afraid or, just being, even if it was not based on logic or rational thinking, how would you have navigated your decision? If everything in your life is pointing towards you should be in the land business for time, but your spouse isn't on board, how would you navigate that?
It'd be tough. We've had, I think back to, I don't know, 10 or 12 years ago, I got into Dave Ramsey, and that took a little bit of effort to kind of bring her on board with that there was some resistance at first. And, not just a flat, no, I'm not going to do it, but she was apprehensive, and it was a process of getting her on board. So I think that I would, probably try to remember the steps that I took there of just constant education, constantly, putting her forward or putting it forward that there is a whole lot of benefits and opportunity on the other side of this thing.
And that reminds me, I think you had mentioned at some point to me, Jay, that you guys have sort of implemented the Profit First thing in your business, the book Profit First by Mike Michalowicz. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. We run our whole business by Profit First. I swear by it. I think it's the greatest thing there is.
For people who, I actually just read that book a couple of months ago. I had been hearing about it from tons of different people, but then you mentioned it. And I knew we were going to be talking. It's like, I better read this book. He's talking about it. But to people out there who have not read that or are not familiar with it, what is the breakdown? Like, what is Profit First all about? And then how do you actually apply that to your business?
So Profit First is a little bit like the Dave Ramsey cash envelope system. So Dave Ramsey says for your budget, if you've got $100 a week grocery budget, you just put a $100 bill in an envelope. That's how much money you've got to spend. You've got $50 in entertainment. You put $50 cash in an envelope. That's how much you've got to spend. Profit First says that you kind of do that same thing, except for you set it up in complete bank accounts. And so our business runs off of 7 different bank accounts. We've got a bank account, it's called Real Revenue. That's where all the money comes into. And then, so once we get paid on a deal, we take that money and we divide it up into the other 6 accounts. That there's one that's called acquisition. That's what we buy and sell everything from. So we take the money, the basis we have on a property, and we return that to acquisition. Then we have the profit. and we divide 15% of it goes into our operating expenses, 15% goes into a tax account. We take 10% and put it back into the acquisition, to constantly keep that growing. We take 10% and we put it into a profit account that we pay out quarterly. And then Daniel and I each get 25% of the profit.
Mm-hmm. And to clarify, when you say 7 different bank accounts, do you mean like checking accounts within the same bank account? So like you're at the same bank?
Yeah. Essentially, that there's 3 of them are savings account actually, and then the other 4 are checking accounts.
Okay.
Yeah. And I just kind of add on to that. Being a partnership, it makes it so easy to take a quick glance and you can see exactly what you've got where and how everything's split up. And it makes it super easy to track too, as you're going through, if you ever had an audit or anything, it's so well just laid out there that it makes it easy just to know exactly where you are when you go take a look at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think my biggest takeaway from that book was just pretty early on. He talks about this idea of, most businesses, when they find out they have a profit, that's actually like a historical picture of what already happened. And a lot of times people have already taken their profit. So like, it looks great on paper, but like you've already spent the money because you've been eating in your profit all along. And with this profit first idea, you're basically just allocating the money to where it's supposed to go. And you don't actually touch it until that use comes up. So you're never in this situation where you like unknowingly robbed yourself of the money that you were supposed to use for this or that. And it's so true that like so many business owners, myself included, for the longest time, just like you basically just, run your business based on whatever that single balance is in your checking account. And that's all you look at. And there's just, it's kind of like flying blind because there's so many things that can come out of left field and just whether you have a loss of revenue or a huge expense you weren't planning for. And to be prepared with that kind of business envelope system, it's super helpful just in terms of like maintaining control. And it definitely takes discipline to do that. I mean, it's not like it doesn't just happen by itself, but it's pretty helpful when you do that.
Yep. And it's always funny when you go in and are trying to set up all the accounts and they're kind of scratching their heads.
Yeah. No, I did that just, after I read the book, I went to Chase Bank and I'm like, have you ever heard of Profit First? And the guy's like, no. Like, I don't know why you're doing that. So
we had a similar conversation with our tax accountant.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, you're really complicating things with all these transfers and all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's funny. Well, I really appreciate you guys diving into that. I think we actually addressed something just now that for the listener is real gold, because I know being kind of a young entrepreneurial type person, it's really hard to find resources that resonate with me that are simple enough for me to actually implement. But that sounds like something that would be very easy to set up, very easy to manage. And I just really appreciate you guys being so transparent in that gold nugget there. Let's talk about your guys' deal size, your average deal size. So how much are we looking at, in terms of acquisition? Do you guys take a portion and put that not just towards acquisition, but like, do you tack on a certain amount for direct mail costs? Do you factor in your direct mail costs into your acquisition price? Dive into all that for me. And then what's your typical sale price?
Okay. So starting out, we didn't really weren't focused on the terms deal. So everything that we were doing was, starting out, it was kind of 5 to 20 acres. And then we said, well, we're missing out. Let's go ahead and bump it up to 5 to 100 acres. And then we sent a couple out that were, up to 250, 300 acres. And so that was kind of our main bread and butter. We would, as far as kind of cost, we're averaging buying property for about 10,000, selling for 23,000 is kind of our average. And those sizes kind of reach the gamut from 5 to up to our biggest was an 80 acre property. So.
Cool.
Awesome.
Tell me about that 80 acre property. How did you come across that? And was that like a hard deal to get? Did you have to offer a ton for that one, or how did that work?
No. Jay, you can go ahead and jump in on that one.
That's really a pretty good story. It was 2 sisters. We sent a mailer out, and I think our mailer was like 10 to 40 acres, something like that. And we reference acres a whole lot because our prices are pretty consistent. But we generally consider somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 market value for the counties that we work in. And so when Daniel and I talk back and forth, we can tell acres and know dollar amounts. But so this deal, one of the sisters called and said, "Hey, you sent my sister a letter. We've actually got adjoining properties that total 80 acres. If you're willing to, I think we'd offered $685 or something per acre. If you come up to $750 an acre, we'd like to sell it." And so we pulled it up on the map. We use Parlay quite a bit.
Cool.
Big fans of it.
Yeah, me too.
And it is unusual for us to have what we call first tier lots that actually touch the lake, actually lakefront properties. Mm-hmm. And this thing had, 100 yards or so of lakefront. Wow. And we were like, holy smokes, this is one of those home run things that we always hear people talking about in the land business. Yeah.
I'm gonna jump in real quick. So lakefront is, if it's a heavy rain, the water will eventually get up to that line. It's kind of
you actually lose most of your property.
Yeah. It was in the back of a cove, but we actually, I think, talked to her like on a Friday night or Saturday or something, but we drove down there on Sunday to see this thing. That we were expecting something that we were going to pay $65,000 or $70,000 for, and sell it for like $300,000. We got down there and looked at it, and we were like, this just looks like all the other land that we buy. It's pretty hilly. It's sure worth the money they're saying, but our excitement on it tapered off. We came down to, we'll probably sell it for like $200,000. Long story short, we held that thing longer than we normally do and ended up selling it for $110,000. So we even after paying commission and everything on it, we made $40,000, which was pretty exciting. That was really, the big one that pushed me forward, and it was like, this thing has wheels, that there's really chances to make a full-time income on it. But it wasn't quite the home run that we were expecting it to be.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've had some deals that are similar in nature to that in a lot of ways, like lakefront, about that much lake frontage, not 80 acres, but, a pretty big property. And it's been pretty similar, to me, just in terms of like thinking it's going to be worth X amount. In reality, it will sell for far less than that. Still a great deal though, like totally qualifies as home run, but like it's kind of like you have this like, moment, but it still turns out pretty well. Well, that's cool.
So kind of the other side to that deal, that was early spring, late winter that we bought that. And that's when we just first started getting into using a realtor to list our land. Jaron and I had talked a while back on Mossy Oak Properties. And so at this part of the state, there is a Mossy Oak Properties, and then there's also a competitor of theirs. We had some other land that we had just bought, and we didn't know which one was the better realtor. So we did the old Pepsi challenge, and we listed this 80 acres with the realtor, and then 2 or 3 other properties with the Mossy Oak Properties. And the Mossy Oak Properties guy sold those things like the same week that we gave them to him. I mean, he's phenomenal. It's just automatic, and just a real, he'll go look at properties for us, tell us what he expects that they'll sell for. He helps us price counties. Right here is what you can expect to get for it to sell it quick. So his help is almost cheating. Mm-hmm. This guy that listed the 80 acres for us was not real responsive. I think that had we had that 80 acres listed with Mossy Oak at the beginning, we would have done better all the way around on it.
Yeah, I just want to jump in there, and for the audience listening right now exclusively, I'm listing everything that comes in with agents. I took a little bit of a break using agents when I transitioned from Indiana to Florida, but it just, the key is you have to find agents that really know what they're doing in land. But if you find one, it's just like Jay said, it's a cheat. You can, in the land business, the thing that gets bottlenecked is dispositions, or what I call dispositions, but selling property. But when you put in an agent that knows what they're doing over that, it's almost like you're outsourcing your business for 10% commission after it sells. But I use my agents a lot on the front end. I can't tell you how many properties I've shied away from. Literally just this week, I had an agent go buy a property that on paper looked perfect. The seller was extremely excited to sell, but then he got there and the road stopped short of the property. So you literally run into a bush and you don't have road access. But the aerial maps make it look amazing. So I am 100% sold. I'm actually going to be writing a blog post. If it's not this week, probably starting next week. It will probably be out many weeks in the future. We're kind of pre-scheduled on a lot of things. But I'm actually going to be writing a blog post about the agent questionnaire that I use, and how I'm actually planning on interviewing my wife, because she's really good at, we've hired bad agents and good agents, and we've kind of gone through the ropes there. And I think that there's some really high value. So when that comes out, we will link it in the show notes.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys definitely want to check that out. But I commend you, Jay. Mm-hmm. I am a huge fan of using agents.
Yeah. And so we've been very strategic on kind of building relationships. We talked about, we're focused in the state of Missouri. And that's really, everything from relationships with an agent like that, to we've got relationships with a title agent that she's amazing. She turns stuff around fast for us. It's amazing what a bouquet of flowers on Christmas does. She thought it was the greatest thing in the world. And another key part of our team is, we can call her and say, hey, we've got a question about this. What are your thoughts on this? And it's quick response. It's very sincere. She wants to help us out. So I just think that has allowed us to really grow. I know a lot of people talk about building their buyers list. And that's certainly something that we're focusing on for our smaller properties. But I mean, we're essentially paying the agent's commission is, we're using his buyers list, because they've spent a lot of money on marketing. So we're happy to pay that percentage and keep going down the road.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty huge takeaway, just this idea that agents do have a place and they can be useful. And I know for me, like for years, I had tried just using random house realtors, and they were terrible at it and they never did the job right. But again, like I wasn't looking at land specialists. I wasn't looking in the right places. And, it seems like that's, obviously a really important part of succeeding on that front. So I'm curious for you guys, like if you went with Mossy Oak Properties, like, do you think is that all you need to do? Just talk to somebody at Mossy Oak Properties or any land place like that? Or do you actually need to like qualify these people to find out, okay, are you good at your job? And then you can work with me. And if so, like, how do you know who you're dealing with without just pulling the trigger and seeing if they're good or not?
I think some of it's just the luck of the draw. I mean, that 80-acre deal that I talked about earlier is proof in the pudding on that this is an agent that works for a land exclusive company. They do ranches, farms, recreational land. And he gave us the same service you would get from a house realtor, that, he listed it on MLS, took some pictures for us, and then was just waiting for a buyer to come to him. This Mossy Oak broker, I think he is an exceptional guy. That we've actually seen it. I mean, we know that he is high up on Mossy Oak and their sales rankings and stuff. So I can't say that everyone is as good as him, but I can tell you that he turned some of our business to an agent inside of his office, and she did just as good. Mm-hmm. I mean, in fact, she probably beats the bushes harder and is more proactive. So I don't know what the trick is to finding the right one. I can tell you from experience, when you find the wrong one, it sucks, and you'll know it pretty quick. But there are the right ones out there, and they're worth looking for, because we pay them 7%, and that is the best 7% we spend in our whole entire business.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think 10% is like the norm for a lot of, I don't know why it's less like that. I don't know if it, maybe it's a state by state thing, or once you hit a certain dollar amount or a certain type of agent, I don't know, but 10% is what I've heard for years. So 7% for land, it's pretty good.
And I'd gladly play 10%. I mean, that
hopefully he's not listening.
Yeah.
No, we paid 6% to the other guy, to the bad guy.
Yeah. What would you say is the sign that you've got a bad one versus a good one? Like, is there some pattern you noticed?
Yeah, I mean, like anything, we should have recognized it a little bit earlier at the beginning, that he just wasn't real responsive to us reaching out to him. You know, we had to send him a couple of emails at the beginning. Hey, did you get that listing? Did you get a chance to look at it yet? That we could have known earlier on that we just didn't have anything to measure him against. We were just ignorant on the whole process. I think today, if we had that same experience that from the very beginning, when we were having to chase him to get this thing listed for us, we would have moved on right there. And that's the beauty, that now that we have the relationship with the Mossy Oak guy, we'll ask him straight up, hey, we're wanting to move to a different state. Who is the Mossy Oak broker there that we want to go to? And he'll look at his sales records and say, this guy moves a lot of property, talk to him.
Yeah. On that issue with the state that you guys are working in, what you're doing, where you're sort of like working in your backyard, so to speak, I did a very similar thing when I was getting started, and it worked out okay. But knowing what I know now, I don't know that I would have started in Michigan and stayed there as long as I did. Like, what was your reasoning for starting where you did? Like, was it just because it was your backyard, or did you like research a whole lot of stuff and you said, yes, this really is the best place we can be?
So when I that first mailer I sent out, I wanted to be in Missouri just because of the fact that it was in my backyard. You know, this is a complete new thing to me, and I wanted to, if I needed to, I could go look at something.
Makes sense.
And so I goofed up my first mailer pretty good. I was looking through kind of back tax, number of back tax properties. We weren't mailing strictly to back tax properties, but just kind of get an idea of what's going on in the county. And then just kind of average price per acre, looking on Land Watch and everything else. And there was a particular subdivision in this county that was huge. I mean, thousands and thousands of acres, and they had high HOA dues, very restrictive covenants. So they sold all these lots back in the 80s, in the back of magazine ads, and everybody bought it. And it's just, there's very few houses on there now. And people are stuck paying, $200-$300 every year for a piece of property that they never go see. And so my offer price was significantly lower than it probably should have been, just based because all of those properties were kind of lumped in that county. And that's kind of how we started there. And then just got more familiarity with the area. So.
Yeah. How common is it for you to actually drive out and visit each one of these properties? Like, because you can, does that mean you do? Or have you done that less and less as time has gone on?
Certainly considerably less.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you mentioned HOAs. Do you guys buy a lot of properties that are in subdivisions that have HOAs?
We will every now and again. Typically we shy away from them, but and typically the size range that we're in, it's usually not an issue.
Gotcha.
But we'll pick up some every now and again if the price is right.
Yeah. If you were to go to another state, what would you be looking for to get you comfortable with that? Or is that truly not on the radar? Like, you're just good where you are?
No, I don't think that we don't have any plans right now to go to another state. That we've got some plans of actually working our way through Missouri. I think there's 144 counties in Missouri, and looks like most of them are worth sending a few letters to. But I think that we're pretty comfortable in this dollar range where we're at right now. So I think that we would just try to find some comparable dollars, and that there appears to be this niche at recreational lakes. So we try to find a similar market in other states.
Yeah. I'm curious, have there been very many, challenges or like failures, so to speak, you guys have had to sort through? I know we kind of mentioned, Daniel mentioned the first mailer and kind of the issues with that. But like what are some examples of some of the hard things you guys have had to sort through as you've, become entrenched in this business and figured out what does and doesn't work?
I think one of the biggest things is with Jay and I's personality, we're both of the mindset that these are just problems that we can solve. We've encountered lots of title issues, but turns out a lot of those we can, that's where we'll come in and provide value, whether it's going through a quiet title suit or something like that. And that's, it sounds kind of daunting, at least it did to me at first. But again, that's another thing where you're just hiring an attorney and they do all the work. And next thing you know, you get something in the mail that says, hey, we've got this taken care of. Here you go. So I think, a lot of challenges with that. But again, that's where you can come in and provide value, because they're going to have, if they're wanting to get rid of that property, whoever buys it from is going to have to deal with it. So we're happy to go through that and provide value.
That's actually interesting on the quiet title issue. Is that something that has come up like many times or once? And like, how much does it cost and how much time does it take to get through all that?
So far we've just completed one, correct?
Yeah, we're one and like 2/3 the way through, I hope. And like Daniel said, it's kind of like Christmas. You pay them the retainer up front and say, hey, we've got this jacked up title. Can you fix it? And they're like, yeah. I don't know. It was like 4 months later, actually got an email. Hey, send us the rest of the money. This thing's good to go. And I hate to say it, but the first one was like $1,500. And this last one that we're working on, they quoted us a price of like $1,300. And these are, right there in that same price range. I think this is an $18,000 property that we'll sell for close to $40,000. And so there's plenty of money to do that. But this is one of those deals. It's like 5 or 6 siblings. One of them's dead. We've had another one, that earlier one, I think the guy was in prison or something. And they just take care of it at the lawyer's office. I mean, I don't even know what all they do or what all they have to do. I just know that the day comes and they're like, yeah, this thing's good to go.
Yeah, that's interesting. I know the quotes that I've gotten on quiet titles in the past have been like $1,800 to $2,000 to get them done. It probably varies on the state or something like that. But I think the most common reason that I've ever encountered in terms of why you would have to do one is because in the title history of the property, there was a tax sale, which, I mean, it doesn't seem like that should be a problem, but it is. Most title companies have a huge issue with that. The only way to get over it and get title assurance is to get the quiet title action. But it sounds like this works for like pretty much any issue where there's a, big hole or some kind of an inconsistency in the chain of title that needs to get cleared up, right?
Yeah, but the first one we did, it actually was an easement issue.
Okay.
That they helped us get straightened out, that there was easement in the title up to a certain point. A divorce, they did a quick claim and forgot to put in the easement language. Going forward after that, it didn't include it anymore. And so they had to go back. This one is just so many people, hard to find and figuring out where they're at.
Yeah.
As we kind of wrap up today's conversation, something that I felt we didn't dive into much in the conversation was seller financing and what you guys are doing there. So I just wanted to ask, I know we talked a lot about agents, and I feel like an agent makes sense in a cash transaction, but do you guys utilize agents for your seller financing deals? Are you guys using a website and a payment processor like Heartland, or what are you guys doing? How are you guys servicing your seller financing deals?
Yeah, we don't utilize an agent. That pretty much our minimum compensation that we pay the agent is $1,000 is kind of what we agreed to. So at 7%, it doesn't make much sense to do any deals that are less than like $12,000. So we do all of our owner finance stuff for sell by owner, just regular land. We list it on Craigslist. We do have a website. We use Geek Pay, and actually hoping that Geek Pay will get on with Heartland. For them right now we have Stripe, but all of the monthly stuff goes through the ACH payment. Mm-hmm. We're actually working on a new website that we've got a developer that's trying to integrate a lot of those things into our selling website to where it's going to be a little more seamless. So we'll see how it works out. Like Daniel said earlier, that we're just really ramping up the owner finance side of it, but we're trying to have the systems in place to make it as efficient as we can.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Are you guys familiar with REI Land List?
I just read the post yesterday or day before.
Yeah, I'm the exact same boat. Just read it. So,
how far are you down the road with your new website project?
Way.
Oh well, I'm sure it'll be great.
Spending a heck of a lot more money on this revision. This guy that's working on it, though, the whole concept behind it, we use Podio, mm-hmm. and he is going to tie Podio into our website to where it'll talk both ways back and forth. It'll add new listings to it from Podio side, and when we sell them on the website side, it'll put everything into Podio. So we are getting some value add there. Yeah. But when I read that post, it looked pretty cool.
Yeah, cool, man. Were you going to say something, Jaron? I felt like I cut you off.
I was just going to say that a recurring theme that I hear often is that Geek Pay is a pretty viable solution. It's interesting. I hear that when it first came out, there were a lot of bugs, but more and more often now I'm hearing that Geek Pay is a really solid solution to service seller finance leads. So Jay, I'm just curious, since you're newer to the land business than Daniel is, I wanted to ask, what aspect of this business do you feel you're particularly good at? Do you wake up every day and you're like, you know what, I just love making blind offers. I just love spreadsheets and scrolling down. It's like, you just absolutely love it?
Well, there are some things that I like more than Daniel does. Like I'd mentioned earlier, we use Podio. I like some of that geeky stuff. I mean, it doesn't bother me to spend a weekend in Podio to make it do some of the cool things that it does. And Daniel hates that stuff. I mean, he's like, just show me how to make it do it at the end. I don't care what you had to do to get it there. I like that. I think really probably one of my strongest suits in the land business, though, is what we've talked about all along, building these relationships, not only with our vendors and our partners we use in the business, but, I'm fairly tight with quite a few REtipster people that I reached out to Carl James at the very beginning. And when Seth first started up the mastermind groups, I was in a group and it never really gelled real tight. So I asked Seth permission. Hey, is it cool if I, solicit some other groups on my own? And I figured I'd go to Carl, right off the bat. And he was very welcoming. And that through that mastermind group, I made some relationships with some really high level guys that are high functioning in the land business, but just throughout, we consulted with Willie Goldberg on our terms deals. That's a guy that's clearly doing it right, and so we wanted his input on it. There's a ton of knowledge out there at our fingertips if you're just willing to ask these guys. I mean, I've never had anybody say, no, I don't have time for you. Everybody's always been super, super gracious and willing to share. I just had to be willing to kind of make myself nervous to ask them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's awesome.
I guess I should stop sending out that standard email to everybody that I don't have time for your email. Something I send to almost everybody who emails me. Just kidding. Yeah, that's cool. When you guys think about, like, I know we've sort of touched on a few of these things already, but what would you say for each of you is the hardest part about this business? Like, what do you just hate the most? What is the biggest drag on you mentally to get through? And have you figured out any ways to simplify those things as long as you've been doing this?
So I'll jump in there. The day-to-day kind of admin stuff drives me insane. Whether it be posting stuff to Craigslist, we're still trying to wrap our head around Facebook Marketplace, but that drives me crazy dealing with those people. There's some nice people in there, but holy smokes, there's a whole handful of other people that just drive you nuts.
Hashtag, is it still available?
Yeah, when you say those people, you're talking about when you post it somewhere and then random interested parties respond to your listing?
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And so I like I kind of talked about before, I enjoy kind of the more strategic, big picture, planning things out. And, you know, I struggle. We use Pat Live, so that's helped out a lot. Jay's great at relationships. He can talk to somebody on the phone, and depending on where they are geographically, you'll hear his voice change, kind of match them. So he's really good at that. And that I usually like to take a little bit of time to, if we get a Pat Live call, I like to really research it and have everything scripted out and know exactly how that conversation is going to go. Mm-hmm. And so that's just kind of my personality. I like to be able to have it planned out when I'm talking to somebody and know exactly what's going to happen and have 3 or 4 different scenarios planned out so I can react to it.
Yeah. So if somebody called in from Ireland, Jay, could you use an Irish accent? Is that something?
No, he's actually making fun of me. I'm originally from South Arkansas. Okay. And so when I hear Southern accent, I think genetically it fumes back up in me.
That's funny.
So for the rest of this call, can you speak in a Southern accent for us?
Somebody's going to have to start it to get down that path, but then I can.
Okay. I'm not good at starting that, so we'll just have to trust you, I guess. So if you could single out a single biggest lesson you've learned through this business, what would that lesson be?
I'll go first real quick. So I've got 2 things. Number one, we can always solve a problem. It's just a matter of finding the right person to fix it. That's the biggest thing. And there's really no problems that can't be solved. I think that provides a lot of value. Other, kind of big lessons learned is some humility. We recently had a 240 acre property that somebody came back to us with the purchase agreement, and we'd agreed on a price and got a little bit ahead of ourselves thinking we had the financing lined up. And turns out it all fell flat on its face. So that was, I wanted that big deal just to get under my belt, and, didn't really think it through as well as I should have. So,
Yeah, that's bound to happen eventually. I know that whole thing you talk about with, there isn't a problem you can't solve. I would totally agree with that. And I think that's a valuable takeaway. And especially if you can get around the law enforcement issue with the police catching on to what you're doing, you can solve any problem. So what about you, Jay? Is there anything else you would add to that?
I have learned, particularly over the last 6 months or so, just what what a huge deal mindset is. And, it not only knowing that there's no problem that can't be solved, law enforcement included or not, but being able to remind yourself of that every morning when you wake up, and being able to actually live that out, and not just have it as some pithy saying that's going on in the back of your mind.
Awesome. Yeah, that makes perfect sense, man. Cool. Well, if people want to find out more about you guys, is there any website they should check out, or anything else you want to share about that before we wrap this up?
At probably our sell side would be the most useful for people to go to, and that's royallandco.com. Royal Land Co.
Cool. I like that name.
Yeah, I like that name too. I was about to say that.
At our buy side is Royal Investment Properties, and then we have a DBA that we sell at Royal Land Co. That was Daniel. That was back 2015, 2016 when the Kansas City Royals were all the rage around here. So,
right. Huh. Yeah.
And you can get a hold of either Daniel or I at Jay, or Daniel at Royal Land Co. or RoyalInvestmentProperties.com.
Awesome. Yeah, and I can just vouch for Daniel. You're not in the REtipster Club, are you? I don't think I've seen. Okay. I know Jay though has been super active, super helpful, just tons of great ideas and just questions and just thoughts he's always throwing out there. Very good conversation fodder. So thank you very much, Jay, for being active there. And yeah, again, I really appreciate you guys taking the time to come on the show and to share your thoughts and experience. It means a lot. And I know a lot of people will get a lot out of this. And yeah, we'll have to keep us posted on how things are going, and maybe we can do this again sometime.
Let's do it. Thanks a lot for having us. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Thanks again, guys. See ya.
Thanks.
So there we have it. Any other thoughts on that, Jen? It was a pretty good conversation, don't you think?
Yeah, it was, man. The only thing that really comes to mind is I'm just super honored to work at a company that gets to make the impact that REtipster makes. For me, my main driver is impact. And it's easy to get bogged down with the day-to-day of the podcast and, I got to come up with another blog post. But when you listen to a story like Jay's, where, he's one drop in the sea of the people in REtipster who've been impacted by what you share and what I've been able to help you share in the last year or so. And it's just amazing that I get to work for a company that makes such impact. His life legitimately changed. Like, he's able to quit his job and live life on his own terms because a large portion of what we do every day.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I know what you mean. It is, I don't know if it's just the way my brain works or if everybody has this kind of thing, but it is really easy to get bogged down with all the day-to-day stuff that we're trying to do and stay on top of. And it's easy to miss the bigger picture of everything that's happening and all the good that's hopefully being done through the kind of stuff we're working on. So yeah, it's great to have those kind of reminders and hear from people who are really living the dream. So yeah, man, I'm with you.
Yeah, man. Another thing that's interesting from that conversation is not that Jay and Daniel said this exactly, but I'm always in a weird position when I hear hardcore entrepreneurs kind of talk down on their job. Like, even not in a bad way, not talk down, maybe that's not the right word, but you, even as a part of your personal story, one of the major highlights is that you were able to quit the job that you weren't passionate about at banking so that you could do REtipster full time. But I've kind of been fortunate to live a career where I've had a lot of autonomy. So I've always been like an entrepreneurial type person, maybe more similar to what Dave Ramsey calls an entre leader within a company. Like, even back at my Bigger Pockets days when I was at 1099 back in 2014, I remember there was one guy that put a forum post going on and on about how employee mindset this, and like just kind of down talking people who work a full-time job. And I think he was actually like calling me out specifically, like, you should go and quit your job and be a thing. If it wasn't a direct call out, it was something very similar to that. And I actually brought it up to Brandon, and we kind of had a laugh about it because I was a 1099, but Brandon's actually like a bona fide employee of Bigger Pockets. And so it's funny because there are these weird hybrids of like entrepreneurial people that work for people. Like, so I don't know. It's interesting. I would be curious what your thoughts are. Cause obviously I don't want to fire my boss. I kind of like him.
Well, that's good to hear. Yeah, I know what you mean, man. I actually, my story was not exactly similar to you. I mean, there were similarities because I had a job. I definitely did not have the autonomy that you had. And I think to me, that was almost the bigger issue. It was like, I didn't really want to be told what to do. And like, I wanted to be able to start work whenever I wanted, do it whenever I wanted, and do work that I really loved doing, not something that was just kind of slogging through it every day. I definitely did not hate my job. Like it wasn't like I despised the people I worked for or anything like that. It was more just like, this isn't the level of freedom that I want. And, I think it is sort of easy to lump all jobs into just bad. Like that's all it is. But that is totally short-sighted, I think. And I know, I've had friends that have run multiple $1 million companies and they still chose to work their job because they liked it, So it's like, it's not like you're automatically a failure or you're not really living up to your full potential just because you haven't taken that step. And I think it's totally fine to work your job as long as you want, if that's really how you want to spend your life and if that's what you get enjoyment out of, So, and I think that satisfaction and enjoyment can also come in the form of just a feeling of security. Like for some people, that's really important to them, and a job offers that. Whereas a lot of times running your own business just doesn't come with those kind of, I don't think it's really guaranteed in either case, but I don't know, it doesn't, there's more of a like, hey, you're on your own, man, so you better figure this out. Whereas with a job, there are certain psychological benefits, I think, that can come with that. So yeah, I don't think it's bad at all to have a job. It's just a matter of, is that really, where you feel called to spend your life? Because if so, then great, you're doing it. But otherwise, it's always good to push for something that gives you more of what you want,
Yeah, I think maybe for me, the main difference between most people and the vast majority of my career is that I've worked in roles where I've had a lot of autonomy. Like yesterday, you and me didn't even talk to each other, like the entire workday. And I'm sitting here going on my computer, you're going on your computer. We didn't even like send a chat message or anything to each other. And that's normal. A lot of people actually can't thrive in that environment though. A lot of people need more accountability and, hey, make sure you're doing your stuff. Mm-hmm. And maybe just because I've done it so long, I don't, or I'm just wired differently that way. But I don't know, maybe that's what people are really after, is it's not so much the job, it's the fact that certain personality types like to have more control over their schedule. Because I'll tell you firsthand that like if I had to work certain hours or, obviously showing up to podcasts or whatever, that doesn't matter. But I remember one of the first jobs that I ever had working security, somebody forced me to take a lunch break. I'm like, I don't want to take a lunch break. I have work to do. I have to go do my rounds. Like, no, legally, you have to take your lunch break right now. Mm-hmm. If you don't, we'll all get in trouble. And that was like, that's not going to work very much. And I was only there for like 2 months.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of a strange mentality. I don't know if it's a union thing or what that is, but I remember seeing that one time when I was at the store and there was a huge line of people. This was in the gardening center of the store, and there was a huge line of people waiting to check out, and there was an employee sitting right there just watching them. And he's like, sorry, I'm on break right now. I can't help you. I'm just like, are you kidding me? Like, you're sitting there doing literally nothing, and you can't I don't know, that just doesn't compute to me, Like if something needs to be done, you just do it. Like it's just the right thing to do. But
that's how I function. Yeah.
Yeah. On to the question that we're going to talk about this week as we reveal a little bit more of each of ourselves. That probably sounded really bad, but it's not how it sounded. But anyway,
sounds like my immoral video.
Yeah, I should explain that a little bit. That was pretty funny. So Jaron and I a couple weeks ago got together in person, something we only do probably once a quarter or so. And one of the primary reasons for this meeting. We were meeting all day. We were going to shoot some videos for an upcoming course that we're putting together. So, when we're both there, it's a lot easier to hammer out a lot of these videos at once. We can use 2 different cameras and get some really cool shots. But anyway, one of these videos, the title that we use for it is it immoral? And what we're referring to is it immoral to, make offers to motivated sellers and get properties for cheaper than they're worth? Like, is that immoral? And we just started referring to it as the immoral video, just because, we both know what that means. And Slack, as Jaron and I are talking, we get just back and forth. We keep referring to this as like, hey, I just uploaded the immoral video. You can check it out over here. And I'm like, maybe we should start using different words in case, I don't know, anybody in my life looks through this and is like, what is this immoral video you together when you met together at a hotel to make videos all day? So anyway, it's one of those things I don't know. It was like the perfect joke that just set itself up.
Yeah, and when he messaged that to me, I literally busted out laughing, and I called my wife over, and we sat there and laughed for 2 minutes. It was awesome. Hilarious.
Yeah. So anyway, the question that Jaron and I are going to answer is, what does someone else have that you envy? Describe the situation and your feelings about it.
You want to go first?
Yeah. So, I can't say I've thought about this a ton, so I feel like this isn't the most decisive answer, but I know just first name that came to mind when I saw this question was Tim Ferriss, the author of The 4-Hour Workweek. So yeah, I read that book probably 10 years ago now. And like many people, the book kind of blew my mind and just totally made me think of lots of different ways that life could be lived and ways that my career could be formed and that kind of thing. And I've always sort of followed Tim Ferriss from afar ever since then, his blog and his podcast and videos he's made. And I don't know, I feel like that guy just has life nailed. He's living a life that's awesome. He's making probably more money than he could ever spend. I don't know, just from afar, it feels like he's got everything going for him. And I don't know if that's true. In fact, it's probably not. I'm sure there's probably all kinds of issues that he just wouldn't ever post on Instagram and make YouTube videos about. But I just think as a content creator and as a communicator and somebody who just has ideas that he shares, he's just got a lot to offer the world. And I just kind of envy how good he is at that. He's really good at delivering, his points and coming up with really good ideas and just engaging interesting content. And I admire that about the guy. So I think it's not necessarily his things that he has or anything like that. It's more just I would love to be that effective in all the stuff that I put together.
Have you seen his recent TED Talk? I think it was a few years ago. He actually got really vulnerable and talked about clinical depression.
Oh, yeah. I did see that.
Yeah. So I agree with you. On the surface, it looks like that guy is the guy worth aspiring to be like. But even he, in all of his glory, had some personal issues, that mental health stuff that he was dealing with.
Yeah, I thought that was actually really smart and just helpful of him to do that, just to be real. And so I guess that's another example of why I kind of envy the guy, because he's good at, being vulnerable in ways that are actually helpful and appropriate, even though they're uncomfortable, so yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah. So for me, it would be probably people that live a missionary lifestyle, or a friend of mine who I know who travels 6 months out of the year. His lifestyle is really intriguing. On Facebook, he is in Asia and the Philippines, Vietnam. He's going all over the place, and it just looks like an amazing life. I'd be curious about his family dynamic, because I don't know how often his family travels with him versus stays back here stateside. But him and other people that live that lifestyle of being a world traveler, that's something that's very intriguing to me. And I would really love to cultivate a lifestyle where when my kids are a little older, like obviously I have one kid right now, but we hope to have two more, and I want them to be old enough to actually be able to have memories of traveling. But because, I'm able to work remote and that sort of thing, I would really like to take advantage of that and, just tour the world. I'd like to take my son to Japan, or if, we're learning about the Renaissance, like actually go to Italy and just be like, let's experience like the remnants of the Renaissance in the flesh and that kind of thing. So that's something that I really am envious of, is people who are able to have a travel lifestyle. I think experiences, like impact experiences, are for me what I value as wealth, as a signs of a wealthy life, not necessarily a bunch of money in the bank and working a 15-hour day job. I think that if you can make enough money where you don't have to worry about it anymore, and then you can go have amazing experiences before you die, I think that's the life for me.
Yeah, man.
So.
That makes all the sense in the world to me. Yeah, whenever I think about places I want to travel to, there's really just two prerequisites for me. They have to have McDonald's and Starbucks, or I'm not going. Those are the two most important things in my life outside of my kids.
That's hilarious.
I kid.
Yo, I do want to say, Belize, ever since Will Mitchell in that podcast,
episode 40 or 48, episode 48.
I can't shake it, man. I was even asking my wife, because we're going to be going to Florida for a month in January. I was asking her, like, in February, since we're going to be so close, do you want to just go to Belize? I really want to go check it out. The guy really did a good job selling me on the place. So
yeah.
I'd love to go check it out.
It makes me wonder, like, how many other countries and places in the world are just as cool, if not cooler. It's just that nobody's ever really explained that to us as well as Will Mitchell did. So yeah, I think Belize probably does inevitably have a lot to offer, but I'm sure there's lots of other places like that too. It'd be interesting to find out, other cool places. Yeah.
100%.
Cool. Well, appreciate you, dear listener, sticking with us, and I hope you enjoyed the episode. I hope you learned a lot from it. And this is episode 50. So if you want to check out the show notes, see links and references to all the stuff we talked about throughout the conversation, it's at retipster.com/50. That's 50. And you can see a summary of everything there. Thanks again for listening, and we hope to talk to you guys again in the next episode. See you next time.